She served them dinner while his pregnant mistress sat in her chair. His mother threw wine in her face, then spit on her cheek. His brother recorded the whole thing on his phone while everyone laughed. Her husband looked away and said nothing. Then he sent her to sleep in the basement, on a concrete floor with a thin blanket, while his pregnant mistress moved into her master bedroom. For 7 years, this woman cooked, cleaned, sacrificed her career, and gave up everything for a man who told her she was nothing. His family treated her like trash. His mistress mocked her to her face. She had no money, no family, no way out. But here's what none of them knew. Every single property her husband claimed as his own, the penthouse, the office building, the luxury cars, every wall, every floor, every ceiling they celebrated under, belonged to her. Her father, the man they all thought was just a simple janitor, had secretly built an $88 billion empire, and he left every single penny to the daughter they called worthless. What happens when a woman they push to the basement turns out to own the entire building? Stay until the end. Because the moment she walks into his biggest event of the year and takes that microphone, you will not believe what comes out of her mouth. Value statement. This story is not just about revenge. It is about knowing your worth even when the people closest to you try to erase it, because your value was never determined by how they treated you. It was always determined by how you treat yourself. Call to action. If this story gave you chills, if it reminded you of your own strength or the strength of a woman you know, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a story like this. Leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done in Nicole's shoes? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And make sure you like this video, because the more you engage, the more stories like this we can bring to you.
The penthouse was silent except for the sound of Nicole's hands trembling as she placed the roasted chicken on the dining table. She had spent 6 hours preparing this meal, 6 hours chopping vegetables, seasoning meat, baking cornbread from scratch. The kind her grandmother used to make on Sunday afternoons when the whole family would gather around a tiny kitchen table in a house that smelled like love. The kind Darnell used to say he loved. The kind he used to request every anniversary, pulling Nicole close and whispering that nobody in the world could cook like his wife. But tonight, Darnell was not looking at her. He was not looking at the food she had prepared with aching hands and a breaking heart. He was looking at Candace, the woman sitting in Nicole's chair at the head of the table, the woman whose pregnant belly pressed against the mahogany edge, the woman whose smile stretched wide and triumphant, like she had already won a war Nicole did not even know she was fighting. Nicole stood in the corner of her own dining room like hired help, like a ghost haunting a home that no longer recognized her presence. She wore the same apron she had worn for 7 years of marriage, the one with the small sunflower pattern that was starting to fade from too many washes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, except for the small gold locket hanging around her neck. The one thing she never took off. The one thing that still felt like home. Darnell's entire family had gathered for what he called a special announcement. His mother, Sharon, sat to Candace's right, her diamond rings catching the chandelier light, as she reached over and squeezed Candace's hand like they were old friends reuniting after years apart. His brother, Andre, lounged back in his chair, scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing up at Nicole with a smirk that made her stomach turn inside out. Darnell stood up. His glass of champagne was raised high, and the room fell quiet. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, the kind of handsome that turned heads when he walked into a room. Nicole had fallen in love with that face 7 years ago at a charity event downtown. She had looked across a crowded ballroom and seen him laughing, his head thrown back, his smile lighting up the entire space. She had thought to herself, that man could heal anything with that smile. Now that same smile made her feel sick. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," Darnell said, his voice smooth and confident, like he was addressing a boardroom full of investors. "I've got some news that is going to change everything for this family." He looked down at Candace, and she looked up at him with adoring eyes. The kind of eyes Nicole used to have when she believed her husband loved her. Candace is 6 months pregnant with my child. The room erupted. Sharon jumped from her seat and hugged Candace like the younger woman had just announced she cured cancer. Andre whistled and clapped. Darnell's father, a quiet man who rarely spoke, nodded his approval and raised his glass toward the ceiling. Nicole stood frozen. Her hands gripped the edge of the serving tray so hard her knuckles turned white. 6 months. He had been sleeping with this woman for at least 9 months, maybe longer, maybe from the beginning. And now he was celebrating it. In their home, at their table, with his entire family cheering like this was the happiest day of their lives. Sharon turned to Nicole then, and the warmth that had been on her face moments earlier evaporated like morning dew under a brutal sun. Her eyes turned cold, sharp, predatory. "Well, do not just stand there like a statue," Sharon snapped. "Pour the champagne. We are celebrating." Nicole's hands shook as she walked to the table. She could feel their eyes on her, every single pair, judging her, mocking her, enjoying her pain like it was entertainment. When she reached Sharon's glass, the older woman yanked it away at the last second, causing Nicole to spill champagne across the white tablecloth. "Clumsy as always," Sharon muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Andre laughed. Candace did not even try to hide her grin. Darnell looked away, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. "There is more," Darnell continued, and Nicole felt her stomach drop through the floor. "Candace is going to be moving into the master bedroom. She needs comfort and space during her pregnancy." He finally looked at Nicole, and there was nothing in his eyes. No love, no guilt, no recognition that she was a human being standing in front of him with a heart that was shattering into dust. "Nicole, you will be staying in the basement until you learn your place in this family." The basement. The cold, unfinished basement with concrete floors and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The place where they stored old boxes and broken furniture. He wanted her to sleep down there, while his pregnant mistress took over her bed, her room, her closet, her life. "About time you got rid of that burden," Andre said, raising his glass toward Darnell, like they were toasting a business deal. "A man needs a woman who can actually make him happy." Sharon stood up from the table. She walked slowly toward Nicole, and the entire room watched in heavy silence. When Sharon reached her, she picked up her wine glass, and without a single moment of hesitation, threw the red liquid directly into Nicole's face. The cold wine splashed across Nicole's cheeks. It dripped down her neck. It stained the white blouse she had ironed that morning, the blouse she had chosen because it was Darnell's favorite color on her. Nicole gasped, but she did not move. She did not wipe her face. She did not run. Then Sharon leaned in close, so close Nicole could smell her expensive perfume mixing with the sharp scent of wine. And she spit directly onto Nicole's cheek. The saliva slid down slowly, mixing with the wine, and Sharon whispered words that would burn in Nicole's memory forever. "You worthless trash. You never deserved my son." Candace laughed from her seat at the table. Andre pulled out his phone and recorded the whole thing. Darnell looked away. His jaw was tight, but he said nothing. He did not stop his mother. He did not defend his wife. He just let it happen, like Nicole was not even worth the effort of a single word. Nicole stood there for what felt like an eternity, wine dripping from her chin, spit sliding down her face. Her heart breaking into pieces so small, she did not think they could ever be put back together. Then slowly, carefully, like a woman walking through a minefield, she set down the serving tray. She picked up the small pillow and thin blanket she had already prepared, because somewhere deep inside her broken heart, she had known this was coming. She had felt it building for months. The cruelty, the distance, the way Darnell looked at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of his expensive shoes. She walked toward the basement door. Behind her, she heard the champagne bottles popping, the laughter rising, the celebration continuing like she had never been there at all. The basement was cold and dark and smelled like damp concrete and forgotten things. Nicole descended the wooden steps carefully, her vision blurred by tears she had refused to let fall in front of them. She would not give them that satisfaction. She would not let them see her cry. They had taken her dignity, her bedroom, her place at the table. They would not take her tears, too. When she reached the bottom, she sat down on the concrete floor and pulled the thin blanket around her shoulders. It did nothing against the cold. Above her head, she could hear the music starting, the stomping of feet as they danced, the sound of her husband's laughter mixing with Candace's high-pitched giggles, the clink of champagne glasses celebrating the death of Nicole's marriage. This was her life now. This was what 7 years of devotion and sacrifice and love had brought her. A concrete floor, a thin blanket, the sound of her replacement being celebrated above her head. Nicole reached up and touched the small gold locket hanging around her neck. She opened it carefully and looked at the tiny photo inside. Her father's face smiled back at her, Samuel Anderson, the man who had raised her alone after her mother died when Nicole was only 3. The man who worked 3 jobs and never once complained. The man who made lopsided birthday cakes and read bedtime stories and taught her that she was worth more than all the gold in the world. "I promised you I would be strong, Daddy," Nicole whispered to the photo. "I am trying. I am really trying." She closed the locket and pressed it against her heart. The metal was warm from her skin, and for just a moment, it felt like her father was there with her, holding her, telling her everything would be okay. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw an email notification. The subject line read, "Estate Settlement Urgent." She stared at it for a moment, her mind too exhausted and broken to process anything. She turned off the phone and set it aside on the cold floor. She was too shattered to care about anything right now. Too empty. Too hollowed out by years of being told she was not enough. But that email would change everything. It would change her life in ways she could not possibly imagine sitting on that basement floor. It would reveal secrets that had been hidden for 7 years. It would expose the truth about her father, about her husband, about the very ground she was sitting on. But first, let us go back. Let us go back 7 years to a time when Nicole Anderson still believed in love and happy endings. Let us go back to a small southern town where a young girl lived with her father in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, where the smell of fresh linen drifted up through the floorboards, and the sound of tumbling dryers was the lullaby that rocked her to sleep every night. Samuel Anderson was a quiet man with strong hands and gentle eyes. During the day, he worked as a janitor at the local high school, pushing his mop down hallways while students walked past him without a second glance. At night, he cleaned office buildings downtown, emptying trash cans and scrubbing toilets while the executives slept in their comfortable homes. On weekends, he sat in the public library studying business books, taking notes in a worn leather notebook he carried everywhere. People in town thought Samuel was just a simple working man trying to get by, a widower doing his best to raise a daughter alone. They smiled at him with pity. They left him small tips at Christmas. They had absolutely no idea who he really was. Nicole was 16 when her father gave her the gold locket. It was her birthday, and they were sitting on the apartment's small balcony, eating birthday cake Samuel had baked himself because they could not afford a bakery. The cake was lopsided. The frosting was uneven. There were more crumbs than decoration. But it was made with love. and to Nicole, it tasted better than anything she had ever eaten. Samuel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. His hands were rough from years of manual labor, the skin cracked at the knuckles, but they were steady as he placed the box in Nicole's hands. "Happy birthday, baby girl," he said softly. Nicole opened the box, and her breath caught in her throat. The locket was beautiful. Delicate gold with intricate engravings along the edges, patterns that looked like tiny vines wrapped around each other. She opened it and found their photo inside, a picture from when she was 10 years old, both of them grinning at the camera at the county fair, cotton candy in their hands, the Ferris wheel spinning behind them. "Daddy, this must have cost so much," Nicole whispered, tears filling her eyes. They could barely afford groceries some weeks. How had he paid for something this beautiful? Samuel shook his head. "You are worth more than all the gold in the world, baby girl. Do not ever let anyone tell you otherwise." He reached over and fastened the locket around her neck. His fingers were gentle, careful, like he was handling something sacred. "I want you to promise me something, Nicole. No matter what happens in life, no matter how hard things get, never let anyone make you feel small. You carry royalty in your blood. You are a queen. Do not you ever forget that." Nicole hugged her father tight, burying her face in his chest that smelled like laundry detergent and old books. "I promise, Daddy. I will not forget." Samuel worked himself to exhaustion to send Nicole to college. He picked up extra shifts, skipped meals, wore the same 3 shirts for years so that his daughter could have textbooks and tuition. Nicole studied business and finance at a state university, graduated at the top of her class, and landed a position at a prestigious corporate firm in the city. She was 23 years old, brilliant, beautiful, full of dreams bigger than the small town she came from. She was going to build something. She was going to make her father proud. That was the year she met Darnell. He was 28, charming, smooth-talking, with a smile that could convince you the sky was green if he wanted it to. He was working his way up in commercial real estate, closing deals, networking, climbing the ladder with a hunger that Nicole found attractive at first. He pursued her relentlessly. Flowers delivered to her office every Monday. Romantic dinners at restaurants she could never afford on her own. Weekend getaways to places she had only seen in magazines. He made her feel like the most important woman in the world, like she was the center of his universe. Nicole fell hard and fast. She had never been pursued like this before. She had never felt so wanted, so desired, so seen. After years of being invisible, of being the quiet girl with no mother and a janitor father, Darnell made her feel like she mattered. But Samuel did not trust him. The one time Darnell came to visit their small apartment, Samuel watched him from the kitchen doorway. He saw the way Darnell's eyes swept over their humble furniture with barely concealed disdain. He saw the way Darnell checked his expensive watch when he thought no one was looking. He saw the way Darnell talked about money and success and ambition like they were the only things in the world worth having. After Darnell left, Samuel sat Nicole down at their small kitchen table and looked at her with eyes full of worry. "Baby girl, that man loves what you can give him, not who you are. Be careful." Nicole laughed it off. "Daddy, you worry too much. He loves me. I know he does." Samuel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He had learned long ago that you can't tell young hearts who to love. They have to find out for themselves, even when the finding hurts. 2 weeks before Nicole's wedding, Samuel Anderson disappeared. Nicole came home from work on a Tuesday evening expecting to find her father sitting in his favorite chair reading one of his business books. Instead, she found the apartment empty. Not just empty of Samuel, but empty of his presence. His reading glasses were gone from the side table. His worn leather notebook was missing. His 3 pairs of work shoes were no longer lined up by the door, but there was no note, no goodbye, no explanation. Nicole called his cell phone 17 times that first night. Every call went straight to voicemail. She called the high school where he worked. They said he had resigned 2 days earlier without explanation. She called the office building company. Same story. He had quit, just walked away from everything. She filed a missing person report. The police searched. They checked hospitals, morgues, bus stations, homeless shelters. They found nothing. No body, no evidence of foul play, no trail to follow. Samuel Anderson had simply vanished from the face of the earth like smoke dissolving into air. The detective assigned to the case was a tired-looking man with kind eyes who sat Nicole down after 3 months and told her what she did not want to hear. Miss Anderson, we have exhausted every lead. There is no evidence of a crime. Sometimes people just disappear. I am sorry. Nicole refused to accept it. She hired a private investigator with money she did not have. She put up flyers all over town. She created social media pages and emailed every news station within 300 miles. Nothing worked. Samuel Anderson was gone. The grief nearly killed her. She stopped eating. Lost 20 pounds in 2 months. Could not sleep without nightmares. Could not function at work. Could not do anything except sit in her father's empty apartment and stare at his empty chair and wonder what she had done wrong. Had she been a bad daughter? Had she not loved him enough? Was this her punishment for choosing Darnell over her father's warning? Darnell was there through all of it. He held Nicole while she cried. He brought her food and made sure she ate. He canceled their wedding plans and told her they would wait as long as she needed. I will take care of you now, he whispered, stroking her hair as she sobbed into his chest. You do not need anyone else. You have me. Those words felt like salvation at the time, like a life raft thrown to a drowning woman. Nicole clung to Darnell because he was all she had left. Her mother was dead. Her father was gone. She had no siblings, no aunts, no uncles, just Darnell. Just the man who held her and whispered promises in the dark. 6 months later, still grieving and still searching for answers that would never come, Nicole married Darnell in a small ceremony at City Hall. She wore her father's locket under her wedding dress, pressed against her heart. She whispered a prayer that wherever her daddy was, he knew she loved him, that he was safe, that he was alive. Darnell's side of the courthouse was packed. His mother Sharon was there in her designer outfit, his brother Andre with his flashy watch, his father quiet as always in the back row. Nicole's side was nearly empty. Just 2 college friends who shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The first year of marriage was good. Darnell was attentive, loving, present. They moved into a nice apartment and both worked hard building their careers. Nicole continued climbing at her corporate firm, earning promotions, impressing senior partners. Darnell expanded his real estate business, closing bigger deals, making connections with wealthy investors. They were happy, or at least Nicole thought they were. The changes came slowly, so slowly that Nicole did not recognize them until she was already drowning. Darnell started staying late at work. 3 nights a week became 4, then 5. He would come home at midnight smelling like perfume that was not Nicole's. And when she asked about it, he would snap at her. I was at a client dinner, Nicole. What do you want me to do? Refuse to sit next to women? He became critical of everything she did. Her cooking was never seasoned enough. Her clothes were not fashionable enough. Her career was not impressive enough. You are good at numbers, he would say dismissively during dinner, barely looking up from his phone. But you are not a leader, not like me. You do not have what it takes to be great. The comments were small at first, tiny cuts that barely drew blood, but they accumulated, day after day, week after week, month after month, until Nicole could not look in the mirror without hearing Darnell's voice, telling her she was not enough. Then Darnell announced they were moving into a penthouse. Massive, luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and marble floors, and a kitchen bigger than the entire apartment Nicole had grown up in. "This is my company's newest property," Darnell explained, spreading his arms wide as they walked through the empty rooms. "I worked hard for this. We have made it, babe." Nicole believed him. She had no reason not to. She did not know that the property was leased from a shell company she had never heard of. She did not know that every single property Darnell had ever lived in, worked in, or claimed as his own belonged to companies that traced back to one person, her father. Samuel Anderson, the janitor who had disappeared without a trace, because Side had been quietly building an empire in the shadows, buying properties through untraceable shell companies, investing in technology startups that exploded in value, building a financial fortress so vast and complex that even the most sophisticated investigators would have needed years to unravel it. And at the center of that empire, protected by layers of legal structures and anonymous trusts, was one name, Nicole Anderson. She just did not know it yet. Nicole quit her job 6 months after moving into the penthouse. It was not her decision, though Darnell made it feel like one. "You are exhausted," he said one evening, watching her review spreadsheets at the kitchen table. "You work all day, and then come home and try to keep up this house. Something has to give, babe." "I can handle it," Nicole said, not looking up. "Can you, though?" Darnell's voice carried an edge she had learned to fear. "Because the house was a mess when I brought clients over last week. The laundry is piling up. And honestly, Nicole, when was the last time you cooked a real meal? Not something out of a box?" The guilt was immediate and crushing. She had been trying so hard to be everything: the perfect employee, the perfect wife, the perfect hostess for Darnell's endless business dinners. But she was failing at all of it, or at least that is what Darnell made her believe. "Maybe you are right," she whispered. "I know I am right." Darnell stood behind her and put his hands on her shoulders. "Let me take care of us financially. You take care of the home. We are a team." So Nicole resigned from the career she had built from nothing. The career that had made her father proud. The career that had given her independence and purpose and a reason to get up every morning. She walked away from it all to become what Darnell wanted her to be: a housekeeper with a wedding ring. The first year was tolerable. Nicole threw herself into making the penthouse perfect. She cooked elaborate meals, hosted dinner parties for Darnell's business partners, redecorated rooms, maintained the kind of spotless environment that Sharon inspected every Sunday during her weekly visits. But Sharon was never satisfied. Nothing Nicole did was ever good enough for Darnell's mother. "The chicken is dry," Sharon would announce at dinner, pushing her plate away. "My mother's recipe was better." "Those curtains clash with the furniture. Did you even try, Nicole?" "When are you going to give my son children? A real wife would have made him a father by now." That last one was the cruelest cut of all. Nicole had been trying to get pregnant for 3 years by then. She had been to doctors, taken fertility tests, adjusted her diet, tracked her cycles with obsessive precision. Everything came back normal on her end. She had begged Darnell to go to a fertility specialist with her, to get tested himself. He always refused. "It is probably you," he would say casually, like the words meant nothing. "My boys swim just fine." The pain of infertility was Nicole's deepest wound, and Sharon weaponized it at every opportunity. She would bring baby magazines to Sunday dinner and leave them on the table. She would talk about her friends' grandchildren in excruciating detail. She would look at Nicole's flat stomach and shake her head with theatrical disappointment. My son deserves better than a woman who cannot even give him children, Sharon would say, loud enough for Darnell to hear from the next room. And Darnell never corrected her, never defended Nicole, never told his mother to stop. His silence was its own kind of violence. Then Candace appeared. She entered their lives as Darnell's new business partner, 26 years old, ambitious, bold, with a confidence that filled every room she walked into. Darnell introduced her at a dinner party, and Nicole noticed immediately how his eyes followed Candace across the room, how he laughed louder at her jokes, how he touched her arm when they talked, casually, like it meant nothing. She is brilliant, Darnell told Nicole that night in bed. Closed 3 deals this week. 3. What did you do today, Nicole? Clean the house? These comparisons became constant. Candace closed a deal. Nicole burned the roast. Candace impressed the investors. Nicole forgot to pick up the dry cleaning. Candace was everything Nicole was not. Ambitious, driven, successful, fertile. Nicole confronted him about the late nights 3 months after Candace joined the company. She had found lipstick on his collar that was not her shade. A text message on his phone that read, "Last night was amazing," followed by a heart. Darnell exploded. "You are paranoid. You are insecure. You are suffocating me with this jealousy. Maybe if you were woman enough, I would not need to work so hard to get away from you." The words hit like physical blows. Nicole retreated into herself. She stopped asking questions, stopped checking his phone, stopped looking for evidence of what she already knew in her bones. One afternoon, she left the house early to surprise Darnell at his office with lunch. She walked into the parking garage and saw them, Darnell and Candace, stepping out of the elevator together. His arm was around her waist. She was laughing, tilting her head back, her hand resting on his chest. They looked like a couple, like they had been a couple for a long time. Nicole dropped the lunch bag. The containers shattered on the concrete floor, and Darnell looked up. For 1 second, one terrible second, Nicole saw the truth in his eyes before he could mask it. Fear, not guilt, not remorse, fear of being caught. "Nicole, this is not what it looks like." "I saw you," Nicole whispered. "I saw everything." Candace walked over slowly, her heels clicking on the concrete. She stopped right in front of Nicole and smiled. Sweetie, if you cannot satisfy your man, do not blame the woman who can." Nicole ran. She ran through the parking garage and out into the street, and she did not stop running until she was 6 blocks away, standing on a sidewalk, gasping for air, tears streaming down her face, while strangers walked past without a second glance. That night she confronted Darnell at home. She begged him to end it, to choose their marriage, to go to counseling. She got on her knees in their living room and pleaded with the man she had given everything to. "Darnell, please, we can work this out. I love you. I have always loved you. Please do not throw away 7 years." He looked down at her with disgust. The kind of disgust you reserve for something you scrape off the bottom of your shoe. "There is nothing to work out. You are nothing, Nicole. You have always been nothing." Then he hit her, an open palm across her face that sent her spinning to the floor. The crack echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot. Nicole lay on the marble floor, her cheek burning, her vision blurred, and heard Darnell walk away. His footsteps faded down the hall. A door closed, and Nicole stayed on that cold marble floor for a very long time, touching her father's locket and wondering how her life had come to this. 3 days after the dinner party, Nicole lay on the basement floor in the same clothes she had worn that night. She had not showered, had barely eaten. The thin blanket was not enough against the cold, and her body ached from sleeping on concrete. Above her, the penthouse pulsed with life that no longer included her. She could hear Candace's laughter ringing through the floors, could hear Sharon's voice every morning, Arriving with shopping bags for the nursery she was already decorating in the master bedroom, could hear Darnell on the phone, closing deals, making plans, living his life as if Nicole had never existed. She had become invisible in her own home, a ghost haunting a basement while the living celebrated above. On the fourth morning, her phone rang at 6:15. Nicole almost did not answer. She had turned the phone off days ago after that email notification she had been too broken to read, but something pulled at her, some instinct, some voice that sounded like her father whispering in her ear, "Answer the phone, baby girl." She picked up. "Miss Nicole Anderson?" The voice on the other end was deep, measured, professional. "Yes," Nicole whispered, her voice raw from crying. "This is Harrison Blake, senior partner at Blake and Associates. I am calling about your father, Samuel Anderson." Nicole sat up so fast she hit her head on a low-hanging pipe. Pain shot through her skull, but she barely noticed. "My father? He has been missing for 7 years. Did you find him? Is he alive? Where is he?" There was a long pause, the kind of pause that holds the weight of words no one wants to say. "Ma'am, your father did not go missing. He went into deep cover to protect certain business interests and to fulfill a personal mission. I am deeply sorry to inform you that he passed away 2 weeks ago from a heart condition he had been battling for several years." The world stopped, the basement, the cold floor, the sounds from above. Everything froze. "He is dead?" Nicole's voice came out as barely a breath. "I am so sorry, Miss Anderson. Your father was a remarkable man. He loved you more than anything in this world, and he left very specific instructions for this moment." "Instructions? What are you talking about? My father was a janitor. He did not have instructions or business interests or—" "Miss Anderson." Mr. Harrison's voice was gentle but firm, the kind of voice that had delivered impossible truths many times before. "Your father left you $88 billion in assets, properties, businesses, and investment holdings. You are his sole heir." Nicole's phone nearly slipped from her trembling hands. "That is impossible." "I assure you it is not. Your father was one of the most brilliant investors this country has ever seen. He built his wealth quietly, anonymously, through a network of shell companies and blind trusts. He hid everything to protect you." "To protect me from what?" "From people who would want you for your money instead of for who you are." "Miss Anderson, there is much more to discuss, and I need to tell you some things that will be difficult to hear. This includes information about every property your husband has ever claimed as his own. Can you come to my office this morning? There are matters we need to discuss urgently." 2 hours later, Nicole sat in a leather chair in Mr. Harrison's office on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in the financial district. She had left the penthouse through the basement exit, the one that led to the alley behind the building. She had not changed clothes, had not brushed her hair. She still had wine stains on her blouse from 3 nights ago. Mr. Harrison was an older man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His office was lined with law books and framed photographs. On his desk sat a file folder 3 inches thick and a sealed envelope with Nicole's name written in handwriting she recognized immediately, her father's handwriting. "Before we begin," Mr. Harrison said, sliding the thick folder across the desk, "I need you to understand something about your father. Everything he did, every decision he made, was for you, including his disappearance. You are telling me my father chose to leave me? He was alive this whole time, and he chose to let me think he was dead?" "Not dead. Missing. There is a difference. He never wanted you to grieve him. He always planned to come back, but he needed to see something first." "See what?" Mr. Harrison folded his hands on the desk. "He needed to see who would truly love you when they thought you had nothing. The words hung in the air between them like a verdict. Nicole opened the folder with trembling hands and began to read. And with every page, every document, every financial record, her understanding of her entire life shifted and cracked and reformed into something completely new. Samuel Anderson had begun investing when Nicole was just a baby. Small amounts at first, money scraped together from his janitor paychecks. He had invested in a tiny technology startup that went on to become one of the largest software companies in the world. He had used those profits to buy real estate, apartment buildings at first, then commercial properties, then entire blocks. He had created shell companies to hide his ownership, hired anonymous managers to run his businesses, and funneled everything through blind trusts with one beneficiary, Nicole. "This property, right here," Mr. Harrison said, pointing to a deed in the folder. "This is the penthouse your husband moved you into 4 years ago. He leased it from a company called Meridian Holdings. Meridian Holdings is 100% owned by the Samuel Anderson Trust, which means it is owned by you." Nicole stared at the document, her name, her property, the home she had been banished from, the basement she had been sleeping in, the master bedroom, where Candace now slept in silk sheets. All of it was hers. "It does not stop there," Mr. Harrison continued. "The office building where your husband's company is headquartered, the 3 commercial properties he claims as his portfolio, the luxury vehicles, all of them are leased from entities your father owned. Your husband does not own a single thing, Miss Anderson. He never did." Nicole's tears fell onto the documents, blurring the ink. 7 years. 7 years of being told she was nothing, of being made to feel worthless, of being pushed into a basement while a pregnant mistress took her bed. And all along, she owned everything, every wall, every floor, every ceiling they danced under while celebrating her replacement. Mr. Harrison slid the sealed envelope across the desk. "Your father wrote this for you. He asked that you read it when you were ready." Nicole's hands shook as she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. Her father's handwriting was shaky, written in his final days, but his words were strong. "My beautiful daughter, if you are reading this, then my time has come and gone. I am sorry I left you. I am sorry for every tear you cried because of my absence. But I needed you to see the truth about the people around you. I needed you to know who loved you and who loved what they thought you could give them. You walked through fire, baby girl, and you survived. You are a queen. Never let anyone make you bow. Take back what is yours, all of it. I love you forever. Daddy." Nicole sat in Mr. Harrison's office for 4 hours. She read every document, studied every property deed, reviewed every financial statement, asked every question her sharp business mind could produce, and with each answer, the fog of 7 years began to clear. She had been trained for this. Before Darnell convinced her to quit, before Sharon's weekly inspections eroded her confidence to nothing, before the basement and the thin blanket and the concrete floor, Nicole Anderson had been brilliant, top of her class, rising star at a corporate firm, the kind of mind that could see patterns and numbers the way artists see colors and light. That mind was still there, buried under years of abuse and gaslighting, but still intact, still sharp, still ready. "Mr. Harrison, I need to understand the full scope of what I own." The lawyer smiled. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting 7 years for this moment. "Miss Anderson, you own Anderson Global Holdings, which is the parent company of 43 subsidiary companies across real estate, technology, energy, and finance. Total estimated value is $88 billion. You own 112 commercial properties in 7 states. You own equity stakes in 14 technology companies, 3 of which are publicly traded. You own a private investment fund that generates approximately $2 billion in annual returns. Nicole let the numbers wash over her. They were staggering, incomprehensible, but she forced herself to focus, not on the size of the fortune, but on what it meant. And my husband's entire business is built on properties he leases from my companies. Correct. If you terminate those leases, his business collapses. He has no assets of his own, no properties, no equity. Everything he has built is a house of cards sitting on your table. Nicole was quiet for a long time. She stared out the window at the city skyline, at the buildings glittering in the morning sun, and she thought about the woman she had been 3 days ago, sleeping on concrete, wine staining her blouse, spit drying on her cheek. That woman was dying. Nicole could feel her fading away like a photograph left in the sun. And in her place, something new was being born, something harder, colder, stronger. Mr. Harrison, I want to take back everything that belongs to me. Of course, we can begin the legal proceedings. And I want to do it publicly, very publicly. The lawyer leaned back in his chair and studied her. Your father anticipated this. He left instructions for exactly this scenario. What kind of instructions? Mr. Harrison pulled another folder from his desk. This one was thinner, more precise. Your father researched your husband extensively before he disappeared. He compiled evidence of financial fraud, lease violations, and misrepresentation to investors. He also documented the pattern of emotional abuse. He wanted you to have everything you needed when the time came. Nicole took the folder and opened it. Inside were photographs, financial records, communications between Darnell and his investors, where he claimed ownership of properties he had never owned. Lies. Layer upon layer of lies, built on a foundation of sand. Darnell's real estate gala is this Saturday, Nicole said quietly. His biggest event of the year. Every investor, every developer, every media outlet in the city will be there. Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow. That would certainly be public. Prepare everything. I want the property deeds, the financial records, the lease agreements, everything displayed on screens. I want the whole world to see who Darnell really is. Nicole returned to the penthouse that afternoon through the basement entrance, moving silently through the house like the ghost they had turned her into. She could hear Candace upstairs talking on the phone, laughing about nursery paint colors. She could hear Sharon in the kitchen giving orders to someone about the baby shower she was planning. Nicole did not go upstairs. She gathered the few things from the basement that mattered. Her father's locket was already around her neck. She took nothing else. Nothing in this house was truly hers, except the locket and the concrete floor memories she would carry forever. She checked into a hotel suite downtown under a name Mr. Harrison arranged. And then she began to prepare. The next morning, Nicole walked into the most exclusive salon in the city. She had not been to a salon in over a year. Darnell had told her they could not afford it, even as he bought Candace designer handbags and booked 5-star dinners for his mistress. The stylist, a woman named Grace, who had been doing hair for 30 years, took one look at Nicole's matted, unwashed hair and her wine-stained clothes and her broken posture, and she saw something. Honey, Grace said softly, guiding Nicole to a chair, whatever they did to you, we are going to wash it all away. When you walk out of here, you are not going to recognize yourself. 5 hours later, Nicole stood in front of a full-length mirror in a tailored black suit she had purchased with her new platinum card. Her hair was done. Her makeup was flawless. Her posture had changed. She stood straight, shoulders back, chin lifted, the way her father had always told her to stand. She looked in the mirror and saw her father's eyes looking back at her. The same determination, the same quiet strength, the same unbreakable will. "I kept my promise, Daddy," she whispered to her reflection. "I did not bow, and now I am going to rise." Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that felt almost cruel in its beauty. Clear skies, warm breeze, the city sparkling under a golden sun. It was the kind of day that promised good things to good people. For Darnell, it was the biggest night of his career. His real estate gala had been months in the planning. The city's most luxurious hotel ballroom was reserved. 200 guests were confirmed. Investors, developers, politicians, media personalities. Everyone who mattered in the real estate world would be there, and Darnell intended to close the biggest deal of his life, a $50 million development project that would cement his reputation as a power player. The hotel ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. White linen tables were arranged in perfect rows. A live jazz band played softly in the corner, while waiters in black vests circulated with champagne and canapes. The room smelled like expensive cologne and ambition. Darnell stood near the entrance, greeting guests like a king welcoming subjects to his court. He wore a custom tuxedo that probably cost more than what Nicole's father used to make in 6 months. His smile was wide, confident, the smile of a man who believed he was untouchable. Candace was on his arm in a flowing maternity gown, her pregnant belly on proud display. She had been introduced to guests all night as Darnell's partner, both in business and in life. The word wife had not been mentioned once. Nicole's existence had been erased from the narrative entirely. Sharon and Andre were there too, dressed to impress, drinking champagne like it was water, making loud conversation about the family's success and bright future. Sharon had been telling anyone who would listen about her upcoming grandchild, about the nursery she was designing, about how proud she was of her son for finally finding a real woman. The speeches were scheduled for 9 o'clock. Darnell would take the stage, present his portfolio, and pitch his $50 million project to a room full of people who controlled billions in investment capital. It was supposed to be his crowning moment, the night that everything he had been working toward came together. At 8:45, the ballroom doors opened. Every head turned. Nicole stood in the doorway, wearing a black suit that fit her like it had been designed by angels. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. But it was not her appearance that stopped the room. It was her energy. She radiated something that had not been there before: power, purpose, the quiet, devastating confidence of a woman who knows exactly what she is about to do. Darnell's champagne glass nearly slipped from his fingers. "Nicole," his voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" Nicole did not answer him. She walked through the crowd with her head held high, her heels clicking against the marble floor, in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. People parted for her without knowing why. There was something about the way she moved that commanded space. She walked straight to the stage. The event host, a nervous man in a bow tie, tried to stop her. "Ma'am, the program does not start for another 15 minutes. Nicole looked at him with eyes that could have frozen lava. "The program starts now." She took the microphone from his hand and turned to face the room. 200 pairs of eyes stared back at her. Cameras from 3 media outlets were rolling. Phones were already recording. The jazz band had stopped playing. "Good evening, everyone." Nicole's voice was calm, clear, and steady. Not a single tremor, not a single crack. "My name is Nicole Anderson. Some of you know me as Darnell's wife, the woman he moved to the basement of his penthouse 3 days ago to make room for his pregnant mistress." Gasps rippled through the crowd like electricity. Darnell started pushing through the crowd toward the stage. "Nicole, what are you talking about? Get down from there. You are embarrassing yourself." Nicole ignored him. She clicked a small remote in her hand and every screen in the ballroom lit up simultaneously. Property deeds, financial records, lease agreements, corporate filings, all of them bearing one name that was not Darnell's. Tonight, I am not here as Darnell's wife. I am here as the sole owner and chief executive of Anderson Global Holdings, a company worth $88 billion built by my father, Samuel Anderson. The room erupted. Murmurs became shouts. Cameras flashed like lightning. People pulled out phones to call their offices, their lawyers, their business partners. Every property on these screens belongs to me, Nicole continued, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. The penthouse Darnell moved his mistress into, mine, the office building where he runs his company, mine. The 3 commercial properties he has been showing investors tonight as his portfolio, all mine. My father built them, my father owned them, and when he passed away, he left every single one to me. She turned to face Darnell, who had stopped moving. He stood in the middle of the ballroom, his face white, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. The man who told me I was nothing. The man who told me I would never be great. The man who moved his pregnant mistress into my bed and sent me to sleep on a basement floor. Nicole's voice dropped low, and somehow that made it more powerful. More devastating. That man does not own a single thing. He never did. Every wall he has ever leaned against belongs to me. Every floor he has ever walked on belongs to me. Every ceiling he has ever slept under belongs to me. She clicked the remote again. New images appeared on the screens. The lease agreements showing Darnell's companies were tenants, not owners. The corporate filings proving every property in his portfolio belonged to Anderson Global Holdings. The financial records showing his entire empire was built on sand. The $50 million deal you came here to invest in tonight, Nicole said, addressing the room, is based on properties this man does not own and has never owned. Every representation he has made to you is fraudulent. I am providing each of you with documented proof. Mr. Harrison appeared at the side of the ballroom with a team of associates. They began distributing folders to every table. Investors opened them, and the color drained from their faces one by one. Darnell finally found his voice. This is a lie. Nicole, this is insane. Your father was a janitor. He did not own anything. My father was a genius, Nicole said, looking down at him from the stage. A genius who hid his fortune to protect his daughter from men exactly like you. Men who see women as accessories. Men who measure worth in dollars and obedience. Men who would throw away a queen because they never learned to recognize a crown. Sharon pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. This is ridiculous. You ungrateful little nothing. How dare you come in here and... The woman who spit on my face. Nicole's voice was ice. The woman who called me worthless trash in my own home. The woman who made me pour champagne at a party celebrating my replacement. She paused and let the silence stretch. That woman's son does not own the shoes he is standing in right now. Everything your family has enjoyed for the last 7 years came from the father you mocked. The janitor. The simple working man. The man who is worth more than all of you combined. Darnell fell to his knees. Right there in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by investors and cameras and the shattered remains of his reputation. Nicole, please, I did not know. I am sorry. We can fix this. Please, just give me a chance. Nicole looked down at the man she had loved for 7 years. The man she had given everything to. The man who had taken her career, her dignity, her self-worth, and crushed them all under his expensive shoes. You are not sorry you hurt me, Darnell. You're sorry you got caught. There is a difference. She set the microphone down on the podium, stepped off the stage, and walked through the silent ballroom. The crowd parted for her again, but this time they parted with respect, with awe, with the recognition that they were witnessing something they would never forget. Behind her, Darnell remained on his knees. Cameras kept flashing. Reporters shouted questions. And the biggest deal of Darnell's career died on the ballroom floor next to his dignity. The video went viral within hours. By midnight, it had 3 million views. By morning, 30 million. By the end of the week, it had been shared across every platform, every news outlet, every entertainment blog in the country. The headlines were savage. Billionaire wife destroys cheating husband at his own gala. Man moves mistress into wife's bedroom. Discovers she owns everything. The $88 billion revenge. Queen Energy, Nicole Anderson's gala speech, goes viral. Social media tore Darnell apart with a ferocity that was almost frightening. Strangers who had never met him posted lengthy analyses of his behavior. Comedians made jokes at his expense. Talk show hosts discussed the story in segments that ran 15, 20, 30 minutes long. Darnell became the face of a national conversation about how men treat women they think are powerless. His business collapsed within 72 hours of the gala. Every single investor pulled out immediately after receiving the documentation Nicole's legal team provided. The $50 million deal evaporated. His company's bank accounts were frozen pending fraud investigations. His business partners distanced themselves so fast, it was like watching rats flee a sinking ship. Nicole's legal team moved with surgical precision. Eviction notices were served to every property Darnell occupied. He was given 48 hours to vacate the penthouse, the office building, and all commercial spaces. His company vehicles, leased through Anderson Global subsidiaries, were repossessed. His corporate credit cards, linked to accounts that ultimately traced back to Nicole's companies, were canceled. In 72 hours, the man who had told Nicole she was nothing had become exactly that. Nothing. No home, no office, no company, no reputation, no money. Candace did not wait a full week before she left him. Nicole's private investigator documented the entire breakup from a parked car across the street. Candace confronted Darnell in the parking lot of the budget motel he had been staying in since the eviction. "You told me you were rich," Candace screamed, her pregnant belly straining against her coat. "You told me we would have everything. A penthouse, cars, vacations. You said you were building an empire." Darnell reached for her hands, his eyes red, his clothes wrinkled. He had not shaved in days. "We can figure this out, baby. Please do not leave me. I love you. We can start over." Candace ripped her hands away. "Love does not pay rent. Love does not buy diapers. You lied to me about everything. Everything." She pulled out her phone and showed him a text message. "Derek offered me his guest house. He said he would help with the baby." Derek, one of Darnell's former business partners, a man who had sat at Darnell's table, drank his champagne, laughed at his jokes. Now he was taking his woman. "You are going to Derek?" Darnell's voice cracked. "He is supposed to be my friend." Candace laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. "You do not have friends, Darnell. You have people who tolerated you because they thought you had money. Now that everybody knows you never did, nobody is going to tolerate you anymore." She turned and walked to a black SUV idling at the curb. Derek was in the driver's seat. He did not even look at Darnell as Candace climbed in and the car pulled away. Darnell stood alone in that parking lot for 20 minutes. The motel's neon sign buzzed above his head. A stray cat crossed the empty lot. And Darnell, the man who had stood in a penthouse and told his wife she was worthless, stood in a motel parking lot and wept. Sharon and Andre arrived at Nicole's corporate headquarters 1 month after the gala. They had been trying to reach Nicole through every channel available: phone calls, emails, letters, social media messages. Nicole's security team had blocked everything, but they showed up in person, desperate enough to humiliate themselves in the marble lobby of a building that Nicole now used as her primary office. Nicole's assistant called up to inform her, "Mrs. Sharon and Andre, they are in the lobby. They are asking to see you. They look terrible." Nicole considered not going down at all. She could have sent security to escort them out. She could have ignored them the way they had ignored her pain for 7 years. But something in her, maybe the last remaining piece of the woman she used to be, made her stand up and walk to the elevator. Sharon barely looked like the same woman. No designer clothes, no diamond rings catching the light. She wore a plain jacket and shoes that had seen better days. Her hair was uncombed. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Andre stood behind his mother, trying to look defiant, but mostly looking scared. His flashy watch was gone. His designer clothes had been replaced by whatever he could afford, which was clearly not much. "Nicole, please." Sharon's voice broke on the first word. Tears were already streaming down her face. "We are family. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But we are still family. Please help us." Nicole looked at the woman who had thrown wine in her face, the woman who had spit on her cheek, the woman who had called her worthless trash and celebrated while her son destroyed Nicole's life piece by piece. Nicole felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity, just a vast, empty space where emotion used to be. "You called me worthless," Nicole said quietly. "You spit on me in my own home. You celebrated while your son beat me and moved his pregnant mistress into my bed. You watched him send me to a basement, and you laughed." "I know," Sharon sobbed. "I know what I did. I am so sorry." "You are not sorry for what you did, Sharon. You are sorry that it no longer benefits you. There is a difference." She turned to Andre. "And you. You recorded your mother spitting on me. You laughed while I stood there, with wine dripping down my face. You called me a burden." Andre looked at the floor. He had nothing to say. No smirk now, no phone recording. Just shame. "You are not my family," Nicole said. "You never were." She nodded to security, and they escorted Sharon and Andre out of the building. Through the glass walls of the lobby, Nicole watched them walk to a bus stop and sit down on a bench to wait. 6 months ago, they had arrived at her home in luxury cars. Now they were taking the bus. Nicole turned and walked back to the elevator. The doors closed, and she pressed the button for the 42nd floor. She caught her reflection in the polished metal doors and touched the gold locket at her neck. "Is this what you wanted me to see, Daddy?" she whispered. "Is this who they really are?" The elevator rose in silence. In the months that followed the gala, Nicole discovered something unexpected about wealth. It was not the money itself that changed things. It was the freedom. The freedom to breathe without asking permission. The freedom to make decisions without fear of punishment. The freedom to exist in a space without someone constantly telling her she did not belong there. She threw herself into Anderson Global Holdings with the same intensity she had once given to her corporate career. Mr. Harrison introduced her to the team her father had assembled, trusted executives and managers who had been running the empire in Samuel's absence. They welcomed Nicole not just as the heir, but as a leader in her own right. "Your father always said you were smarter than him," Mr. Harrison told her one morning over coffee in her new corner office. "He said you just needed the chance to prove it." Nicole proved it. Within 3 months, she had restructured the company's real estate portfolio, identified underperforming assets, and launched a new development division focused on affordable housing. Within 6 months, she had expanded into 2 new markets and increased the company's annual returns by 12%. But it was not the corporate achievements that defined Nicole's transformation. It was what she did with her time outside the boardroom. She established the Samuel Anderson Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to the causes her father had cared about most: education for underprivileged children, job training for single parents, financial literacy programs for communities that had been underserved for generations. She built 3 schools in her father's name in neighborhoods where the existing schools were crumbling. She funded scholarships for young women studying business and finance, young women who were brilliant and driven and underestimated the same way she had been. She opened a shelter for women escaping domestic violence, not a temporary shelter with cots and cafeteria food, but a real facility with private rooms, counseling services, job placement programs, and legal aid. She named it Haven House. And on the day it opened, Nicole stood in the lobby and spoke to the first group of residents. I know what it feels like to sleep on a cold floor while the person who promised to love you celebrates with someone else above your head. I know what it feels like to be told you are nothing until you start to believe it. I know what it feels like to lose yourself so completely that you forget you ever had a self to begin with. She paused and touched her locket. But I also know what it feels like to stand back up, and I want you to know that this place exists so you never have to stand up alone. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize that survival is not the same as living. For years, Nicole had been surviving Darnell's cruelty, surviving Sharon's contempt, surviving the loss of her father, surviving a marriage that had been slowly killing her spirit one insult at a time. But surviving is just breathing, just existing, just getting through one more day without falling apart. Living is something entirely different. Living is waking up and knowing that the day belongs to you, that your choices are your own, that the person staring back at you in the mirror is someone you actually recognize. If you have ever been in a place where survival was all you could manage, I want you to know something. The fact that you are still here means you are stronger than whatever tried to break you. And strength, real strength, is not about how much you can endure. It is about knowing when to stop enduring and start living. Nicole moved into a coastal estate outside the city. It was modest by billionaire standards. No penthouse, no marble floors, no chandeliers designed to impress strangers at dinner parties. Just a simple, beautiful house on a cliff overlooking the ocean, with large windows and a garden, and the kind of quiet that Nicole had not experienced since she was 16. Sitting on a balcony with her father, eating lopsided cake. She filled the house with things that mattered to her: books her father loved, photographs from her childhood, a framed copy of her college diploma, the thin blanket from the basement, which she kept folded in a glass case in her study as a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. Every morning, she walked along the cliff path and watched the sun rise over the ocean. She breathed in salt air and listened to the waves and felt something she had not felt in 7 years: peace, not happiness yet. That would come later, in its own time, in its own way. But peace, the quiet, steady knowledge that she was safe, that she was free, that no one could ever send her to a basement again. Darnell tried to contact her 112 times in the first 6 months. Nicole knew because her security team kept a log: phone calls, text messages, emails, handwritten letters delivered to her corporate headquarters. She read none of them, responded to none of them. She had said everything she needed to say on that stage, and there was nothing left to add. The last time she saw Darnell, it was an accident. 6 months after the gala, Nicole was leaving a charity event downtown when she saw him. He was standing on the sidewalk outside her building, looking like he had been waiting for hours, maybe days. His suit was wrinkled, his face was gaunt. He had lost 30 pounds and aged 10 years. The confidence that had once radiated from him like heat from a furnace was gone, replaced by something small and desperate and broken. Nicole. His voice cracked when he said her name. Please. Just 5 minutes. Nicole's security team moved to intercept, but she raised her hand, and they stopped. She looked at Darnell and felt something shift in her chest. Not love. Never love again. That part of her heart had been burned to ash and scattered in the wind, but something close to pity. A recognition that the man standing before her was suffering, and even though he had caused immeasurable suffering himself, she could acknowledge his pain without absorbing it. Say what you need to say, Darnell. I am sorry. The words came out thick, choked with tears. He was not even trying to hide. I am sorry for everything, for the basement, for the dinner party, for Candace, for my mother, for every time I told you that you were nothing. You are not nothing, Nicole. You were never nothing. I was just too stupid and too selfish to see it. I know. I lost everything. My company, my reputation. My family does not even talk to me anymore. Candace left the day the money disappeared. Everyone left. I have nothing and no one, and I wake up every morning wishing I could go back and be the man you deserved. Nicole was quiet for a moment. The city moved around them. Cars passing, people walking, the ordinary machinery of life continuing while two people stood in the wreckage of what they used to be. Darnell, I am going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Not just the words, but what is underneath them. He nodded, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. I do not hate you. I tried to, in the beginning. Those first few weeks after the gala, I wanted to hate you so badly that it kept me awake at night. I wanted to hate your mother and your brother and Candace and everyone who stood in that dining room and watched me be humiliated. She paused and took a breath. But hatred is heavy, Darnell. It is a weight that the person carrying it feels, not the person it is aimed at. So I let it go. Not for you, for me. Then give me another chance. Please, Nicole, I will be different. I will prove it. No. The word was gentle, but absolute. What you did was not a mistake, Darnell. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is leaving the dishes in the sink. What you did was a choice. You chose to cheat. You chose to humiliate me. You chose to let your mother spit in my face. You chose to hit me. You chose to send me to a basement. Those were not mistakes. They were decisions. And they reveal something about who you are at your core. People can change. Maybe they can, but they cannot change with the person they broke. I cannot be your redemption, Darnell. I cannot be the proof that you became a better man, because every time you would look at me, you would see the woman you destroyed. And every time I would look at you, I would see the man who destroyed me. That is not a foundation for anything. That is a graveyard. Darnell dropped his head. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. What am I supposed to do? He whispered. How am I supposed to live with what I dumped? The same way I lived in your basement. One day at a time. One breath at a time. And maybe, eventually, you will find a version of yourself that does not need to break someone else to feel powerful. She reached up and touched the locket at her neck. My father once told me that your value does not come from how others treat you. It comes from how you treat yourself. I spent 7 years letting you define my worth, Darnell. I will never make that mistake again. Nicole turned and walked toward her waiting car. She did not look back. She did not need to. The chapter was closed. The book was finished. And the next story she would write would be hers alone. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who teach us the hardest lessons. Nicole's father taught her patience and strength by making her wait 7 years for the truth. Darnell taught her the difference between being loved and being used. Sharon taught her that cruelty often wears the mask of family. And Candace taught her that some women will build their happiness on the ruins of another woman's life without a moment of guilt. But the hardest lesson of all was the one Nicole taught herself. That leaving is not losing. That walking away from someone who hurts you is not weakness. It is the most powerful thing a human being can do. 1 year after the gala, Nicole stood on the balcony of her coastal estate, watching the sun rise over the ocean. The water was golden, the sky painted in shades of orange and amber and soft pink. The air smelled like salt and possibility. Mr. Harrison had visited that morning with one final delivery, a second letter from her father, sealed with instructions not to open until 1 full year had passed since the gala. Samuel had planned for everything, even from beyond the grave. Nicole sat in her garden chair, the ocean stretching endlessly before her, and opened the envelope with steady hands. Her father's handwriting was familiar, warm, the letters slightly tilted the way they always had been, when he wrote on his knee instead of at a proper desk. My beautiful baby girl, if you are reading this, a year has passed since you took back your crown. I hope you are at peace. I hope the ocean is beautiful this morning. I hope you know that of all the investments I ever made, you were the one that gave me the greatest return. Not because of what you accomplished, but because of who you are. You are kind in a world that rewards cruelty. You are gentle in a world that admires hardness. You are faithful in a world that celebrates betrayal. Those are not weaknesses, baby girl. Those are your superpowers. I am sorry I was not there to hold your hand through the fire, but I watched from a distance, and I never once doubted that you would walk through it. Queens do not need to announce their crowns, they just wear them. And you, my Nicole, have always worn yours, even in the basement, even with wine on your face, even when the whole world told you that you were nothing. You were always everything. I love you beyond time, beyond distance, beyond even death itself. Forever and always, Daddy. Nicole pressed the letter against her chest and closed her eyes. The tears that fell were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of gratitude, of a grief that had finally, after 7 long years, found its way to something like peace. She visited her father's grave that afternoon. It was a simple headstone in a quiet cemetery on the outskirts of town. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention, just the way Samuel would have wanted it. Nicole knelt in the grass and placed fresh flowers against the stone. White roses, her father's favorite. You were right about everything, Daddy, she whispered. You were right about Darnell. You were right about your strength. You were right that I was a queen, even when I forgot. She opened the locket and looked at their photo. 2 people smiling at a county fair. Cotton candy and Ferris wheels, and a world that still made sense. I kept my promise. I did not bow. She stood up and walked back to her car. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the same colors that had filled her father's last letter. Nicole drove away from the cemetery feeling lighter than she had felt in 7 years. She did not know what the future held. Maybe she would fall in love again someday with someone who deserved her. Maybe she would not. Maybe she would adopt children and fill that coastal house with laughter and birthday cakes, lopsided ones, baked with love. Maybe she would just keep building, keep giving, keep honoring her father's legacy, one school and one shelter and one scholarship at a time. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never again let anyone make her feel small. She was Samuel Anderson's daughter. She carried royalty in her blood. She was a queen who had walked through fire and come out on the other side, not just surviving, but living. They called her worthless because she stayed quiet. They mocked her because she served with grace. They broke her because she loved without limits, but queens do not need to announce their crowns. They just wear them. And Nicole Anderson wore hers every single day for the rest of her life. Closing disclaimer. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real-life lessons. Every word was crafted with purpose, to entertain, to inspire, and to remind you that no matter how dark things get, your story is not over yet. Thank you for watching.